really like working with clay. Yeah, how I arrived there, I'm not really sure, but yeah. In other words, it's a little bit like music, like dance, like anything, you know. And I really had no so-called standards to work toward. I wanted to look at it and it felt good about it. When I got out of the Army, I went back to the States and went to check out an art school because I thought it was the only thing I ever knew anything about or how to do, and I didn't have the discipline to get into the other academic areas. So I enrolled at the University of Wisconsin and did a fine arts degree, and learned a lot about drawing and painting and design and that sort of stuff. But invariably I'd slip down into the pottery because I thought it was a hands-on exercise that I really enjoyed. And there was really no one there to show me anything about it, but the materials were there and my desire was there, so I just did it, you know, and I figured that was enough justification to keep on doing it. So anyway, after I finished that, I had some more contacts, and I had an opportunity to get a scholarship to go to an art school in Philadelphia. So I packed up my gear and I went to Philadelphia. I will say, in full confession, that I really didn't have the natural flair. Like real potters could sit down, there were 50 of them like that, and I'm sitting there still working. But the thing I did have is that I wasn't going to quit until I succeeded. This was from an exhibition in Wellington back in the probably 70s as well. But see, some pieces I just kept. When I came here first in 1970, I went fishing because that probably was the one thing I was pretty good at. And so I came here fishing in 1970 and went down to Lake Hawea and down the South Island to various rivers and things like that. And I thought, gosh, that sounds like the place for me. So I decided to come back to New Zealand once I graduated. Because I lived in Eastbourne and lived near some other potters and other artists, and there were 4 or 5 of us, and we had people coming out from Wellington out to the States to the same center, and it wasn't an accredited school or anything. It was a place that we had to work, and I worked with some marvelous artists, Gene McKinnon, Julia Van Helden, Penny Walker. I mean, we had some really good ones. This is mine with sigillata on it. See that sheen on it? It's almost like shoe polish. And that's only clay that's been put into sawdust and then lit lightly so that the sawdust will just smolder down through. I've realized at that stage that I didn't really have the motivation or drive to make hundreds of things. You know, I'd make one and I'd start getting just distracted, and that as I'm looking through the various artists that I've been influenced by, you know, in the States, more in the States than here, and that people just get onto a direction and go. I mean, that was the neat thing about it. It's like music, yeah. Just because you learn how to play guitar doesn't mean that you got to play flamenco all the time. You can do other things. And so I thought that whatever medium I had was a medium that I could that was mine. That was part of what I am, right? And it's not a money maker. It's something to do with your life.
I can remember getting a mention on the radio when I was probably about, I'll guess, 7. Apple for the Teacher. I got I don't know if you'd call it a prize, but I got a mention on the radio for an apple for the teacher. So I was always doodling, if that's the right word. The light colours you leave white. So you can build up colours, like I've already done an underpainting here, but the idea is that the sky is a wash. So when we say wash, we just mean that we're using a lot of water. So I make sure that there is that bead that you can see of. Oh, this one's soaking it up. That's why I didn't do this before. It's not forming a nice bead on the bottom. It's actually soaking in. At secondary school, so once again going back in time, at secondary school I did do 1 year of art, but I wasn't into art history, and I wasn't going to, at that stage, if you continued, it would be doing art history and things like that, which I didn't really have an interest in. My first job out of secondary school was with what was then called Lands and Survey, and after that Forest Service. Now, I was survey drafting. On a cadastral map in those days, if you changed anything, we used to put a small wash of watercolour paint. This is an old subdivision plan. It shows you the river here, so that's got a wash, a little bit of blue on it. This here is a right-of-way, so there's 3 different colours in there, but because this is a photocopy and it's been reduced, you can't really pick those up. So all these different boundaries all had different colours to them, so I was playing with watercolour paints with my work. In those days, watercolour paint always rippled your paper, like you were using it on paper that was too light. So painting as a kid, the paper always buckled. And I would have been an adult before I realised that if the heavier the paper you use, the less likely it is to buckle. Now the thing with watercolours, this is the part that is really neat, is that it just blends in and you get all the variations happening that you don't actually need to do yourself. The water and the paper are doing that. For example, I'm using greens at the moment. To darken the green, you add a bit of ultramarine into it. To lighten it, you're obviously going to be using a bit of yellow. The different yellows that you use will give you completely different looks. So if I'm doing these trees, now they should have a light side and a dark side, which we'll do later. Yeah, my husband was still coming up here fishing all the time, so I have always been coming and going from this area. My long-term intention is actually being able to sit on the river, see a fisherman and say, do you want me to do a painting of you? The first thing I did when I actually moved up here permanently was to join Artworks, because it gave me a place to go and paint, because although I've got this set up, there are so many other distractions that if I don't take my painting elsewhere, I don't tend to do it. I went along to Pihanga Gallery and had Pat came along and interviewed me at the house, so I must have met all the criteria, and my work was accepted, and now I exhibit or try and sell, whatever the right word would be, I try and sell through the gallery. And yeah, they've been very, very encouraging. It's been great.
Pumice has been the one that's brought me more pleasure and income, and it's quite diverse, as is driftwood too. Carving in driftwood is quite fun also. I got involved about 20 years ago when I first came down here to live, and started doing it and putting it in the markets, hung it up in a tree, did mostly these 12 things out of number 8 wire put the pumice all around it, and they've been very popular. They always sell. And then I got invited by the gallery to come and partake in the gallery, and that was really the start of it. Somebody suggested to me that I should perhaps carve it, and that's where the carving came about. But it's a ready-use material here in Taupo. There's plenty of pumice about, and I gather it from the river and down where the river comes out into Stump Bay. It's the most likely source for it. And pieces have gone all around the world because it's quite light and people can actually take the smaller pieces back in baggage. Always had it in my blood, I think. Always wanted to be. My grandfather was great with the camera in Turangi, and he was quite an artist in that respect. Yeah, at school I loved art, and so and it wasn't until I came here to live that I found that I had the real time to be putting into it. That plus the influence from Artworks, the local art organisation here, and other artists in Turangi. I think the environment too just lended itself to doing something, and it's a therapy. Art is a therapy, and you mustn't do it unless you're having fun and enjoying what you're doing. It's not a serious thing, it's something that is very therapeutic. Yeah, I did the job of president of the gallery for a short time. I've also done president of Artworks, and no, some wonderful people there. Some have come and gone, but always getting new people coming along, wanting to involve themselves in the gallery, which is good. And yeah, it's a good little organisation. Oh, there's a whole group of them. There's painters, there's wood turners, potters. I think it was was people like George Kogis and yeah, Ken Proudfoot that really got it started. But that was all from an exhibition. It started from an exhibition that was put on by Artworks, and then somebody said, well, why don't we actually have a permanent Artworks in Turangi and have a gallery? And so that's how it got going. I came from Taranaki originally, and this sort of atmosphere is far superior to any city atmosphere as far as I'm concerned. I've done a lot of heads, but I like this. I like the koru. I like what that does. It blends into the rock. I always put a hole in, and I think there was a famous European sculptor that always put a hole in his works, and that just gives it that added dimension.
I've never seen painting as a money thing. I've seen it as more of a giving thing and a sharing thing. I grew up, you know, all Mum's paintings were on the walls. She didn't sell them. She just, they were ours. And you get attached to the actual image, and you look at an image and it puts you, it's very diuretic, if you like, and you go back to where you were. And like, I've painted scenes of places, and then one day you're driving along the road and you realise that you're actually in the middle of your painting, and there's a connection there. It's not about, for me, it's not about getting it out there and stuff, but with the reproductions I could get it out there, and I made people happy, and it gave me such joy. I've always been interested in art. It's always been part of my life. Mum was an artist, painter. I remember Mum putting on art exhibitions and getting me and my friends we'd have art competitions, and yeah, actually she told me when I was much older that she always knew I was going to be an artist. I actually have this thing about painting what's around me. I started painting when I was in Wollongong, and I was doing a lot of scenes of like friends' houses, and where I get people to invite me for dinner, and then I'd draw the dinner table. I went to one dinner where they never gave me any food, but we had lots to drink, so it's just a painting of lots of glasses and bottles and things. So it was just a really nice, it was like a series. That's when I probably got more into using paint as a medium for my work. I was using watercolour and gouache and all the water-based things, whereas before I was more drawing. I actually started doing a market stall where I sold photocopies of my work, and ended up doing Salamanca markets, which is a really good really big markets in Hobart. I've never liked the paintings going away because they're kind of my babies, and I just love the idea of I could sell my paintings but not get rid of them. I still have them actually. This one in particular, I just saw it walking past my table. I just wanted to capture the orchid really, but I love this. I love shadow and I love light and what light does, and shadow's one of my favourite things. Yeah, it's like a have to rather than a want to. It's a journey. I find when I'm painting, I'm just in there, and I can be painting and it feels like half an hour, and I look at the clock and I've been painting for 4 hours, and I just immerse myself in it. It's one of my most favourite places to be.
Well, about 45 years ago, the old Forest Service, in their wisdom, demolished a whole lot of native trees around where I was living up at Tauranga. So I started collecting all this timber and then decided I have to do something with it. So I bought myself a book and a lathe and started turning. I have not stopped really. Still got a container load of timber left to see me through to my retirement. This is a piece of matai roots from Turangi station. The trees were harvested to build Auckland and Wellington between the war years. The roots were uprooted and pushed into windrows in the paddocks for cattle. And what you're looking at is generations of cattle rubbing themselves against these pieces of hard timber. Amazing. Can't do it by hand. I had a gallery wood turning shop here in the early 80s when it was the heyday of wood turning, basically, in the early 80s. Primarily because of Helen Clark. She gave the word for foreign affairs to showcase New Zealand craft, and they started the New Zealand Craft Council in Wellington, and through them I sold quite a lot of pieces. So it just kept me going, kept me interested. Oh, the most inspiring thing I saw one day was looking at 6 o'clock news, Jim Bolger being interviewed in Washington DC. The camera panned in on him, panned around the room, and I saw one of my bowls just about fell over. Yeah, but those were the heydays where we moved away from Tucano for 20 years, landscape a 10-acre block over at Old Pungo. And I came back 8 years ago with the container a lot of timber that I had to process. So I hooked up with John and Allison and at the gallery, and I've been contributing to them ever since. I'm not a salesman, so I don't front, I don't go into the shop. I'm very happy to support a worthy venture. It's the only bright spot in town, really. Town is so run down, and good on these people for trying to make it work. It's the form of the bow that I sort of go for. And I stick to forms that I'm familiar with from Asia, really. Haven't been turning for 3 months, and this is it. Just got this piece ready last night for this morning session. Been doing a lot of hearing, fiberglassing work, but it is very therapeutic going around in a circle. Madness, really. Feel like skiing, John, going around in a circle. A bowl in the making, a lot of imperfection. Unacceptable, it was an exhibition piece, all these things here. But this is just a functional bowl, so I'll carry on. There's no end to the sanding. You can just spend hours doing the same thing. Power sanding, very efficient. Lazy man's way of turning. There's probably an hour of quite intensive turning to get to this stage. Oh.
Turangi, Tongariro region at the spectacular southern edge of Lake Taupō, which deserves some cultural attention. So joining us for our regional wrap here that we have every week on Culture 101, on the line is Ali Shannon. Kia ora, Ali.
Hi Mark, how are you?
I'm good. Now I think you are you're in the gallery today. You've got a gallery there in the Turangi shopping centre.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I'm in the gallery, right in Pihanga Art, right at this moment.
So the Pihanga Art Gallery is run by an arts collective, I think. You guys have been there for quite some time, haven't you?
We have. I was trying to think exactly how long. I think it's at least 15 years.
Wow.
I became involved, I think, 15 years ago. And this one. The flux helps the solder to flow. Got to put the little pallion of solder right on the joint so that
the joint is sealed. I really need that piece of solder right there between the two. Just going to heat this up really slowly to start with. Just to Yep, I think I've got it this time. Pretty sure I got it this time. Yep, there it is. Joined together. So these ones that I've just soldered, eventually they will end up being a pair of earrings like this, with the beads threaded on the shank. They'll be pounded as well. You can see those are pounded there. And these new ones are slightly bigger. So I first got interested in jewellery, making jewellery, probably in the late 1980s. I started painting smallish pieces of wood, making brooches and earrings. And I did continue painting my pieces of jewellery for quite a long time. But over time I started using more silver. I would fabricate my own ear wires, and started doing everything myself. I started selling them at craft shows around New Zealand. I would do several craft shows a year. And then in the early 1990s, both John and I opened a gallery called Zeta Gallery. It was a pop-up gallery, and I sold my jewellery, and we sold painted clocks and various other craft work of other people's pottery and all sorts of things. I only had 3 links yesterday, and I added a 4th link. So now they will hang like this. They'll hang like that. But these are far from finished. They still need to be pounded. I'm going to pound them, which I'll do in a second. And then they'll need to be polished, and then I have to make a proper ear wire for them as well. So I'm not sure whether you can see it there or not, but you see how the little hollows creates little facets that sparkle differently in the light. About 15 years ago, I joined the Pihanga Art Cooperative and started selling my jewellery in the Pihanga Gallery, and that has been a fantastic experience. It's a wonderful outlet for my jewellery, and it's a great group of people to work with, and it's a really nice little gallery. For a small town, it's a very special art gallery.